Hi, and welcome to another episode of the Cover Zero podcast, the show where I cover the least in the best way possible. I'm your host, Jason Wells. Today is Wednesday, February 26th. Little bit of NFL action this week. It is the Combine. Now, what does this really mean? Not a ton. It's a bunch of really athletic guys running around in tights for our own amusement. And for some people, that doesn't interest you at all. For me and a lot of the other draft nerds out there, this is a big event. This is one of my favorite events of the year because I don't know why. I feel like it's probably the same reason why people like watching like the strongman competitions. In my opinion, NFL athletes are some of the best athletes on the planet, and this just showcases it. There's going to be some freaky guys that we're going to talk about, and that's going to be part of this episode. I'm going to kind of highlight some guys who could have some freakish combines, talk about the draft class and some of the athletes in general. As always, NFL Weekly Update. Few bits and pieces, few contracts, few retirings to go over. Decent amount to talk about there. And then, as I wanted to do last week, but I'm doing it now, we're grading all of these new coaching rooms and kind of giving my final thoughts on it before they start actually building their teams. Pretty full episode. We should get around the hour mark today, but before we get into things, I posted on the Cover Zero Instagram account that, I'm moving, and lots of people giving me support, liking it, sending me messages to be like, hey, congrats, that's awesome. Really appreciate everyone for sending all those nice thoughts, messages, whatever. Thank you. And I guess, let's just get right into NFL Weekly Update. Starting off with 11-year vet Zach Martin from the Dallas Cowboys is retiring. Zach Martin was my first draft crush. Him coming in that 2014 draft, he was right in the range of where the Dolphins were picking, and I wanted Zach Martin. I wanted him on the Dolphins so badly, and looks like I kind of know what I'm doing because Zach Martin is one of the best offensive linemen in the history of the NFL, and I don't think that's really hyperbole. He is just that good. I mean, he was a 9-time Pro Bowler, 7-time first-team All-Pro, second-time second-team All-Pro, and some of the other crazy stats just about Zach Martin. He has as many first-team All-Pros as he does accepted holding penalties. Hasn't had a false start in just over 6 years. One holding call since CeeDee Lamb was drafted. He's just good. He's awesome. One of my first guys in the draft, and this leaves the Cowboys' offensive line a little vulnerable. Obviously, Zach Martin, hell of a career, hell of a player. I would like to say he should be first ballot Hall of Famer, but it's really tough to be a first ballot guy as an offensive lineman. But if anyone deserves it, it's Zach. Again, incredible career from him. Wish him nothing but the best. From the Cowboys' perspective, at least they drafted some guys young. They drafted Cooper Beebe. They drafted Tyler Guyton last year. But this is just another hole for them to really add on that offensive line. And things aren't looking so great for the Cowboys roster construction-wise. And you got Jerry Jones and Stephen Jones to try to figure that out. So good luck for Cowboys fans, I guess. Zach Martin leaving at a good time, maybe. Next note up here. The Rams have granted Matt Stafford permission to talk to teams about potential contracts and whatever. Does this really mean anything at the end of the day? No, probably not. It was reported Matt Stafford wants somewhere in the $50 million a year range. I don't know who's going to give that for him. If anything, it's kind of like the Lamar situation when he was like a pending free agent sitting out for his contract where like other teams could negotiate with him, but it's basically those teams that were negotiating with him. Lamar was just going back to the Ravens to be like, this is what they're offering me. Do better. Or like match it essentially. So at the end of the day, the Rams and Stafford will probably figure it out. He'll be there next year. But that's not fun. So let's talk about what the potential moves, if Matt Stafford were to go somewhere, what's my favorite destination for Matt Stafford to go? To me, it's the Giants. And a lot of people are probably like, why would the Giants do that? They don't need a vet quarterback to come in. They need someone young. They need to like move on. And yeah, I would agree with that if they had fired Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen at the end of the season. And right now, those two men are still in charge, and they basically have playoffs or bust on the line. And Matt Stafford still in the NFC, in that NFC East that I was going to say is weak, but they literally have the Super Bowl champion and the other NFC game participant with the Commanders, and the Cowboys are the Cowboys. But Matt Stafford in the playing for the New York Giants, I think that they can be a wild card team. Now, again, a lot can happen in an offseason. Injuries and so we are so far away from the start of the 2025 season, so just let me dream. But that offensive line, when Andrew Thomas was healthy, was pretty good. If they can add another good interior piece, maybe a right tackle, I don't know. But the offensive line was okay. Then we look at the weapons. Malik Nabers is a stud. We all know Malik Nabers is a stud. Tyrone Tracy, pretty good in his rookie year. I think Darius Slayton's a free agent since they still have Wan'Dale Robinson, Theo Johnson, tight end. He splashed, and they still have that third overall pick. So to me, if you can get Stafford throwing to Malik Nabers behind a average offensive line, hopefully, and then at number 3, you draft Travis Hunter, who can be your number 2 wide receiver while mainly playing corner to you. That excites me as a Giants fan. I think that's the highest possible outcome that the Giants can have this offseason. And for two guys who are trying to save their jobs with Daboll and Joe Schoen, that is their best possible outcome. I don't believe if they were to pick a QB, they would be making the playoffs. I don't think that there's any quarterback that's available that could get them to that spot either. Matt Stafford is their best chance of saving their jobs. Again, we'll see if Stafford actually becomes available, but I think the other interesting thing is Matt Stafford's brother-in-law is like the assistant quarterbacks coach on the Giants, so like big brain thinking there, but Giants getting Matt Stafford, that's my number 1 preferred destination. On the other side of that, let's say the Rams do get rid of Stafford. What does that return look like? I was talking with Cameron Keegan about it, and Cam thinks if someone offers a first, you pull the trigger immediately. I agree with that. I don't know why teams would pay a first-round pick for a nearly 40-year-old Matt Stafford and pay him $50 million also. That seems like a lot. But again, people are desperate. People are desperate for QBs. There might be a suitor who gives away their first-round pick. But to me, the Giants do have an extra second this year, so maybe if you're looking like second-round pick, third-round pick, and a second next year, that sounds pretty enticing. But what would the Rams end up doing at quarterback? And I mentioned it a few weeks ago where maybe Trey Lance, but that only kind of worked that Stafford would come back. But Trey Lance still a fun option anyways, but the obvious answers are Sam Darnold and Aaron Rodgers. We'll start with Sam Darnold here, but Sam Darnold to me, at least talent-wise, is on the same level as Matt Stafford right now, where don't get that confused. I have Matt Stafford as like my 5th-ranked quarterback. I have who was the other guy I was talking? Sam Darnold. See, he's forgettable. I have Sam Darnold as like my 17th best quarterback. And Matt Stafford, the reason why he's 5th, if I think they have the same talent level, is because he's such a vet of the game. He has been one of the best QBs, and he has been the best. And he's shown it's the mental processing, it's everything, it's staying calm under pressure. Where I just think physical talent right now, old man Matt Stafford is just as good as prime Sam Darnold right now. So obviously, we know Matt Stafford is the better one, but in terms of like arm talent, I think it's pretty equivalent. And you could get Sam Darnold. Again, he's only 27, I believe. Get him on a cheaper deal than you would Stafford. Keep him in that same system and just hope that he thrives. Again, it's asking a lot, and maybe Sam Darnold takes a little bit less money, where maybe he's only making $40 million a year. A little less money, $40 million, Jesus Christ, but maybe a little less money for Sam Darnold so he can stay in a system that he knows works for him and again, it's a more structured system than going to the Raiders, going to the Jets. That system, that culture is there, and Sam Darnold needs that, or at least he should realize that he needs that. So that would be a easy transition one, in my opinion. Rodgers on the other side, 1-year deal would be dirt cheap. Rodgers gets to go back home to California. I mean, he probably doesn't like California that much, knowing his politics, but the 1-year reclamation project of Aaron Rodgers in LA would be very, very interesting. Again, it's the structure, it's the offensive consistency, it's the coaching that Rodgers has been looking for since he's left Green Bay. And they have all that. Again, can Rodgers put his ego aside? Maybe, but on a 1-year deal, which I would assume it would be relatively cheap for a starter, the Rams can add some more in free agency potentially. Obviously, free agency's right around the corner, so they'd have to figure that out soon. But I don't know. I'd like to, again, Rodgers wasn't good this year. The lot was wrong with the Jets, but the stats showed that Rodgers was okay. In a better situation, it might be a little bit better. And I don't know, 1 year of Rodgers at $10 million a year doesn't seem too bad. I think that Sean McVay and Les Snead have basically carte blanche to do whatever they want at this point, and if it's Rodgers and then they have to find their next young QB, it might be that, but those are the two fun options anyways. We spent a lot of time in the hypothetical world there, so let's get back to it. Travis Kelce, not retiring, confirmed by Brett Veach at the Combine. So Kelce, he's got 1 more year left on his contract. I'm assuming that'll be it for him after that. He's energized, whatever, lots left in the tank, yada, yada, yada. Sure. Travis Kelce at this point he will be fading as the season goes on. He'll start off relatively hot, but again, as the season goes on, he's just not that same guy. He's still a productive, solid player, but it's good that the Chiefs are getting him back because, I mean, the holes that they would have on offense in general if Kelce would left would be, they would need a Brett Veach masterclass, but it's good that good for the Chiefs that Kelce is staying, and Kelce maybe one last run with Pat Mahomes for a Super Bowl. We got a contract extension. Bills wide receiver Khalil Shakir signs a 4-year, $60.2 million deal, 32 of that guaranteed. It's a very nice contract. Shakir getting around 15 mil AAV. That puts him in the realm of Tyler Lockett, Cortland Sutton, and just a little bit above Gabe Davis and Darnell Mooney. It's a very good team-friendly deal to lock up a guy who was your number 1 receiver last year. And obviously, they hope he's not their number 1 wide receiver, but a very, very good deal for the Bills to lock in Khalil Shakir at. Next note up, Jonathan Allen has been allowed to seek a trade. The longtime Washington interior defensive lineman was banged up for most of last year, came back, still showed that he's a very good, productive player. And now it's always been Jonathan Allen and Daron Payne, and now they drafted Johnny Newton last year. So now it's looking like Daron Payne, Johnny Newton. They'll see what they can get for Jonathan Allen potentially. But Jonathan Allen to me is still probably in that 10 to 20 range of interior defensive players. Still a very good, very solid player, and wouldn't shock me if someone gives up a late day 2, early day 3 pick for him. Maybe he's got 1 year left on his deal, so we'll see there. The Jags have finished up their GM search right before the Combine, really coming close at the deadline, but it is James Gladstone, who was the Rams director of scouting strategy. He's 34 years old. Very, very young for a GM, and we'll talk about the Jags coaching staff in general because a lot of first-timers on that staff, but we'll talk about that more when I break down these coaching rooms in general, but I don't know. Looks like a good hire. You look at how the Rams have built this team without first-round picks for many of these years. They hit consistently on day 2 and 3, and hey, if James Gladstone is part of the reason behind that, that's fantastic. So maybe the Jags landed their guy. Again, we'll see. I'm interested to see how their draft goes for them. They got very short months' work to really figure out what's going. I'm sure that Gladstone will bring over some work with the Rams and stuff, yada, yada, yada. Next note here, Kirk Cousins likely staying as the Falcons' backup. GM Terry Fontenot at the Combine was basically like, why would we trade him? It would cost us money. Why would we cut him? It would cost us money. We're happy to have Kirk as our backup QB because, yeah, it makes sense. Because regardless of what they do with Kirk, if they trade, if they cut him, they're taking on dead money where they could just eat that dead money regardless and have a solid backup quarterback, someone who Penix can mentor behind, and obviously Kirk doesn't want that. Kirk wants to start somewhere, but unless he's willing to restructure his contract, take less guaranteed money, or take those guarantees out so the Falcons can just cut him, he might stay in Atlanta. He might not like that, but I don't know. To me, that's the Falcons' best move. I don't know why you would get rid of him for the sake of getting rid of him and then have to pay for a backup quarterback anyways. Doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but I digress. Long-time Panthers linebacker Shaq Thompson is hitting free agency. Again, I talked about Zach Martin being one of my guys in that 2014 draft. Shaq Thompson was that guy for me in 2015. I wanted the Dolphins desperately to draft him. Was kind of Travis Hunter light a little bit. Played linebacker, played running back at the University of Washington. Obviously, it wasn't full-time. He was definitely a full-time linebacker. The running back stuff was a little bit fun. But no, Shaq Thompson has been, again, a very good player for the Panthers for a long time, but they're just going in a different direction. And that's crazy for me to say that, Shaq Thompson drafted going into his 10th season, or just completed? I think just completed his 10th season. And he's 30 years old. He's played 10 years in the NFL and he's 30 right now. Like, his body's definitely taken a beating, but Shaq Thompson is a great player. Again, maybe I'd love for Miami to sign him just for my own, like, personal reasons, but Shaq Thompson's tenure in Carolina was very good, very consistent. I don't think he ever hit those peaks that maybe people thought pre-draft, but again, when you have a 10-year starting career in the NFL, you are a very good player, and Shaq Thompson was a very good player. Still is a pretty good player. The Saints fill out their staff with Brandon Staley as their defensive coordinator and Doug Nussmeier as their offensive coordinator. Again, I can talk more about this when we break down these coaching things, but obviously Staley, we all know, the former Chargers head coach, he brought in Kellen Moore in 2023 to be his OC. They both get fired. And Doug Nussmeier has essentially been following around Kellen Moore everywhere he's been. Was the Eagles QB coach last year. And if that Nussmeier name sounds a little bit familiar, Garrett Nussmeier, the LSU quarterback, is his son. But again, more on those and the coaching staff in general for the Saints when we get to that point in the show. And then the Eagles name their new offensive coordinator. It is Kevin Patullo, who was the passing game coordinator for the last few years for the Eagles. And yeah, I don't think it's a great hire. I think this is what worries me with Nick Sirianni, and that's kind of always been my thing, is his coordinators need to be rock solid. That when they first went to the Super Bowl, when he had Shane Steichen and Jonathan Gannon, both guys were like the top head coaching candidates. They left. He hired from within. It went terribly. And then this year he gets two outside hires, Vic Fangio, Kellen Moore. They win the Super Bowl. Vic Fangio is obviously there to stay. He's a dinosaur, but he's very good at what he does. Probably won't take any head coaching jobs anytime soon. And now, instead of trying to find another offensive coordinator, he just promotes from within a guy who he didn't promote the last time he had a chance to promote someone from within. So technically his second choice as offensive coordinator. I don't know. Again, it's hard to judge hires until they have like real experience on the field, but To me, if I was an Eagles fan, it's a little bit of PTSD of like, how is this going to work? But having that good offensive line, having Saquon, having Goddard, AJ Brown, Devonta Smith, like, it's solved so many issues where, again, I could be calling plays on offense and the Eagles should still be seemingly okay. I guess we'll all see when that happens, but that's the Eagles' new OC. Andy Dalton, 2-year deal back in Carolina. Again, the Panthers just keep their backup QB. Dalton, good enough to come in and win one game for you. After that, it's a crapshoot, but good vet QB presence for Bryce Young to have. Stable presence, I guess. Next note up here, the Packers want the tush-push banned. They complained at league meetings about it, that it's not fair, blah, blah, blah. The Eagles are the only team that can do it consistently with success, and the metrics also point that the Bills can do it. I watched that game against the Chiefs. The Bills cannot do it properly. The Eagles, they can. The other teams in the NFL cannot copy it. Sounds like a skill issue. Sounds like that's other teams' issue. I am fine with the tush-push. If you want to stop the tush-push, stop it. And if you're like, oh, it's impossible to stop at the play before then. You know it's coming every time. You can't give them short yardage. Is what it is. I don't care. Packers, bunch of babies for complaining about it. We can move on. Couple retirements here. John Feliciano and Keanu Neal both retiring. Feliciano, longtime guard for the Niners, the Bills, the Giants, the Raiders, I believe. Played in 100-plus games. Again, solid, average starter. Great career. Again, 100-plus games in the NFL. That's a great career. And then Keanu Neal, the former first-round pick from the Falcons. 2017 Pro Bowler. That's when the Falcons made that Super Bowl. Had a really high peak and then just kind of plateaued off. He is only 29. But again, NFL, it's a grind. It comes at you fast. I'll remember Keanu Neal for, again, that peak in 2017. He was a very, very fun player. And as someone who's always ran his fantasy leagues with an IDP, getting Keanu Neal at safety or your DB slot, he was a great player. Racked up the tackles, physical safety. Lot of fun to watch in his prime, but shout out to those two guys. Great NFL careers. And we can just get into the best new coaching rooms. So I have this ranked from 1 to 7 right now. And it's not just the head coach, the coordinators, any other like interesting position coach or other types of coordinators on the staff I brought up as well too, if I thought that they were notable enough. So yeah, let's just start off with the Saints. Kellen Moore, head coach. Doug Nussmeier, see? Irrelevant. Doug Nussmeier, offense coordinator. Brandon Staley, defense coordinator. Not inspiring whatsoever. Again, I've had my issues with Kellen Moore and the stuff that he has had to work with as offense coordinator, and I don't think it's always been there. Like going back to his Cowboys days, they always fell short when it mattered, and those were some damn good offenses that he had to work with. Talking about the Chargers, again, Justin Herbert, Mike Williams, Keenan Allen, yeah, the offensive line maybe wasn't that strong, but like, it shut down when it mattered in that playoff game. And now the Eagles, yeah, they just won the Super Bowl, but that Eagles offense was just, here, Saquon, go run the ball. I don't know. Kellen Moore doesn't impress me. Doug Nussmeier is whatever. First-time offense coordinator, we'll see. Maybe the Saints are trying to get that Nussmeier connection, and Garrett Nussmeier is going to be their quarterback next year. I have no idea. That would just be a crazy Nepo hire, even though it's a draft, technically a hire, whatever. And then Brandon Staley, their defense coordinator. Everyone knows my thoughts and my feelings on Brandon Staley. He is bad at his job. It's just flat out, he is bad at his job. When he was the Rams defensive coordinator all those years ago, when he had to work with Jalen Ramsey and Aaron Donald and Aqib Talib, and I think I'm forgetting someone on that. Another good edge rush. And Ndamukong Suh was there, I think. Like, they had so much talent on those defenses. They were buying all the talent. Again, I could coach a defense if you give me that much talent on it. The Saints have no one. Again, and this is bad. And I've said it from the start. My thoughts on the Saints are basically, yeah, Kellen Moore is going to coach there for 3 years, 4 years maybe, and then they're going to be like, oh, this isn't working out. And then as soon as all of the contracts are done, Mickey Loomis is gone. That means this coaching staff is gone. And then they'll figure out the rest once the books are clean and everything's good. But it's not going to, this isn't going to work out for the Saints. And I know I've been saying, oh, you gotta give some leniency for coaching staffs, and we haven't seen these guys in their roles before, blah, blah, blah. I'm telling you, it's not going to work out for the Saints. 2, 3, 4 years tops, then they're all gone. Then the Saints can come back and try to compete from a total rebuild. But the contract situation is so bad on that team. It's so bad. But we can just move on now to the Jets. Jets head coach Aaron Glenn, offensive coordinator Thomas Engstrand, defensive coordinator Steve Wilks. This, again, it's tough for me to gauge this one, but this is the one I had the least amount of feelings towards, I guess. I like Aaron Glenn. I think Aaron Glenn is going to be a good head coach, but he is a culture builder. And when you're a culture builder, until I see you build that culture and have it work, I don't really have a lot of faith in what he can do. And I do have faith that he can be that guy, but until I see he's that guy, I can't justify anywhere else. Thomas Engstrand, the Lions pass game coordinator, now the Jets' new offense coordinator. Can he do it without Daddy Ben Johnson? Maybe. I have no idea. And then Steve Wilks, he former head coach, former defense coordinator, been around the league for a long time. One of these guys who, yeah, I'm happy that Aaron Glenn has that guy to rely upon. Solid DC. I don't think he's that great of a defensive coordinator, but again, it's solid. Everything about this Jets is solid. Until I see it actually work, I just can't fully trust it right now, and I think that's okay of me to say. I don't think that's that, I don't think I'm, tiptoeing around my thoughts on the Jets hire. I like the hires, but I'm just very neutral about everything about it. Nothing's really impressive, where I can go to the Cowboys now at number 5 with Brian Schottenheimer, head coach, Matt Eberflus, defensive coordinator, Clayton Adams, offense coordinator, and then Ken Dorsey as the pass game coordinator also. So, again, I like the Aaron Glenn hire over the Brian Schottenheimer for obvious reasons. But what the Cowboys did at the other spots interests me more than what Aaron Glenn and the Jets ended up doing. Matt Eberflus is defense coordinator. Say what you want about Matt Eberflus as a head coach, he's awful. His defenses were always really fucking good in Chicago. And now he has a guy like Micah Parsons. Again, there's other talent to work with, but Micah Parsons is the main guy we have to focus on. And having an edge rusher like that, where he's never had an edge guy like that. I mean, we can go back to his time with the Colts, and I don't think that they've really had a stud edge for a while. They didn't have one on the Bears. Montez Sweat is great, but Micah Parsons is just in another league than Montez Sweat as a player. So I think Matt Eberflus, and again, it's the former head coaching stuff that helps, but I think he's an actual, very good defense coordinator. Again, we'll see. Clayton Adams would be a first-year offensive coordinator, and he was the run game coordinator and offensive line coach for the Cardinals. And we all know what this Cowboys team needs desperately is a run game. It started to come to life a little bit at the end with Rico Dowdle. Rico Dowdle, again, he's a fine player, but he's a dime a dozen player. That's just what it is at running back. And now with Zach Martin gone, this offensive line, it's a little weaker. But Clayton Adams is creative enough in the run game. And again, I think having your offense be built around the run game and your offensive line and have that, it's important. I like that hire and where the Cowboys can go with it. Ken Dorsey was the add-on that I mentioned, pass game coordinator for them. He's been around the block a long time with the Bills, most recently with the Browns, was also with the Giants and Brian Dable, I believe. No, that doesn't make sense. Either way. but a notable enough name, and he's their pass game coordinator. Focus on the passing attack. Dak, CD, you got some weapons. Like, again, I'm not a fan of the staff in general, but I like the coordinator hires of Matt Eberflus and Clayton Adams over Thomas Engstrand and Steve Wilks of the Jets. And that's kind of where I have the Cowboys. Now, that roster really needs to get figured out, but I like, again, on paper, what this coaching staff could potentially do. At number 4, I have the Patriots, and I guess I should just... Mike Vrabel, head coach. Josh McDaniels, offensive coordinator. Terrell Williams, defensive coordinator. Thomas Brown, tight end and passing game coordinator. And then Doug Marrone, the O-line coach. Yeah, we'll start off with the things I like. I mean, Mike Vrabel. I have thought Mike Vrabel has been one of the better head coaches of the last decade. Again, always got his teams to compete, stay in games regardless of talent. I mean, hell, he brought that Titans team to an AFC championship game. Like, he is a damn good coach. Terrell Williams, first time defensive coordinator, was held in really high regard by Dan Campbell. We'll see how that goes. Can't really say a whole lot about that. But then bringing in a guy like Thomas Brown and a guy like Doug Marrone, I guess both technically former head coaches. Doug Marrone was actually a head coach. Thomas Brown was the interim head coach last year after some firings, but again, it's good experience to have on the staff. And then talking about a guy who's a former head coach, Josh McDaniels, where unless, again, I'm not going to give him the benefit of the doubt. I was about to say I'll give Josh McDaniels the benefit of the doubt, but I'm not. He's proven to be what he is, and when Tom Brady is his quarterback, goddamn can he call up an offense. But when Tom Brady is not the quarterback, that offense is unimaginative, uninventive. It's just very bland, and I don't think bland works in today's NFL. I don't know. Like, I think Drake May is a great player. There's so much work to do on this offense, and I don't think Josh McDaniels is creative enough of a play caller to get them out of the mud in year one and make them into, again, I'm not expecting much from Drake May in year two. Well, again, we'll see what pieces they add through the draft and free agency, but Josh McDaniels just doesn't do it for me. Like, it's... Like, going back to Vrabel with the Patriot way, it's like, I get it, because Mike Vrabel has proven it, that he's good. Josh McDaniels is just, we want to talk about, like, oh, Bill Belichick's a Brady merchant, and who's more, like, who has more right to the Super Bowl rings? Kind of got lost in my train of thought there, but, like, Josh McDaniels is the real Brady merchant. Everywhere he's gone, like, when he was the Broncos head coach, he flamed out instantly. When he was the Raiders head coach, he flamed out instantly. Without Tom Brady running his simple offense, which Tom Brady can make any offense look elite because he's that good. He's that smart at diagnosing everything and knowing his matchups and whatever. Drake May is not Tom Brady. Drake May, I was going to say, like, might amount, but he won't. Tom Brady is his own. Tom Brady is one of one. I can't believe I'm, like, defending Tom Brady. Just Josh McDaniels, I don't know. It makes me like this staff a whole lot less just because he's there. Again, they're trying to go back to the old Patriot way, which it worked. It was big. It was great for 2 decades. You got to be your own thing at some point, and that's kind of my issue with the Patriots is they're just trying to run back what's worked for, I mean, if it's worked for the last 2 decades, why wouldn't it work now? But I don't know. Again, it's when that hire was made, uninspiring. It's the most I can say. We have the Jaguars up here with first-time head coach, 39-year-old Liam Cohen. First-time offense coordinator, Grant Udinski at 29 years old. First-time defense coordinator, Anthony Campanell at 42. With a first-time GM of James Gladstone at 34. And this really isn't about James Gladstone, but it's worth mentioning. This is a fresh-faced Jag staff where, they got a lot to prove. They got a lot to prove. And again, everyone has said the right things, which it's easy to say the right things. Actually executing them, that's the hard part. But I like the youth movement that the Jags are kind of going with here. Liam Cohen with the Rams formerly, then with the Bucks, obviously. Udinski was the co-offensive coordinator or something like that for the Vikings, and he's 29 years old. Of course, he's held in high regard. Campanelli was the Packers linebackers coach. He was like the interim defense coordinator for the Dolphins too. Again, lots of question marks, but this is kind of like the most fresh-faced room in a while. They don't have, like, Cohen doesn't have the benefit of hiring an older defense coordinator to come in that he can lean on for advice. Technically, that guy Shane Waldron, who's their pass game coordinator, who people are freaking out about, which I kind of get because Shane Waldron and his passing concepts have been, again, not great. People go back to, when he was with the Rams and he was with the Seahawks and they had some good offenses, but, like, wasn't that great. And then we all know what happened with the Bears last year, but, like, is what it is. I like the direction that the staff is going, but it's just question marks everywhere. All of them need to prove that they can be the right guy in their own roles, but I'm excited to see the new direction of the Jags. And at number 2, I got the Raiders. Head coach Pete Carroll, offense coordinator Chip Kelly, defense coordinator Patrick Graham. The Raiders hires have just been fun for me, and I think that's all it really is. I love Pete Carroll as a head coach. I think he is the most energetic 74-year-old I've ever seen, and he will be the oldest head coach in NFL history when the season starts, which is absolutely nuts. Bringing in Chip Kelly as an offensive coordinator, again, one of the best offensive minds in college and in the NFL over the last 2 decades, essentially. And yeah, did the NFL catch up with him with like the no huddle thing? Sure, but he's reinvented himself. He just won an offensive or national championship at Ohio State. Again, it's a fun hire. They still have Patrick Graham, who has been the defense coordinator since 2022, and now he is on his 3rd head coach. That means something. That means, like, again, the room trusts him, the team trusts him, they think that he's doing a good job with the talent he has, and the fact that he's on his 3rd head coach now is honestly kind of nuts. So, shout out to the Raiders for putting together a fun staff, and to cap off the funness of the staff, I guess, they hired Brennan and Nate Carroll. You've guessed it. Yep, those are Pete Carroll's sons. One is the run game coordinator and something else, and the other one's like assistant QB coach and another like type of position. Either way, the Nepo hires by Pete Carroll are incredible. But I don't know. I'm energized by the Raiders staff. Should I be? Maybe. I don't know. The roster's not great, but at least that is like one fun thing I can point out about the Raiders that isn't Max Crosby and Brock Bowers is their coaching staff is very, very interesting. Again, the oldest head coach to have ever coached in the NFL, Pete Carroll. They got Chip Kelly, who's a lot of fun as an offensive coordinator, and then Patrick Graham, who's, again, this is now his 3rd head coach as the Raiders defense coordinator, which I don't think that ever happens, like surviving that many different regime changes, but the Raiders staff has me interested anyways, you can say that. And finally here, the Bears at number 1, head coach Ben Johnson, Dennis Allen, defensive coordinator, Declan Doyle at offensive coordinator. And then the other fun ones that I've added here, Eric Bieniemy, running backs coach, Press Taylor, pass game coordinator, Antoine Randall, receivers and assistant head coach, and JT Barrett as the quarterbacks coach. So we'll start with like the main 3, but Ben Johnson, again, he was the most sought after coach in the league. He's already one of the highest paid coaches in the league despite never being a head coach. The the plan for the Bears with Ben Johnson is to be successful immediately and for that offense to be successful immediately. And they have the pieces, in my opinion, to do that. And I'm very interested to see how Ben Johnson does. And again, a former head coach to rely on in Dennis Allen. Now, Dennis Allen was a very shitty head coach, and we know this, but his defenses were always solid with the Saints. We can say that. So again, it's someone to rely on with some of the more head coachy aspects of the job rather than just Ben Johnson with offense. And then they bring in Declan Doyle, another one of these wonderkin, 28 years old, was the tight ends coach for the Broncos. We'll see how this goes. This is obviously Ben Johnson's guy to groom into the next great NFL offensive mind, maybe, where because Ben Johnson is an offensive coach, and I've said this, I don't think Declan Doyle is worried about, he's going to be like a one-year poach candidate if the Bears do really well. All that's to be seen, but the other guys that I listed on the coaching staff too, most teams I listed one, maybe two other interesting things. The fact I was able to list four, again, that's interesting. So even if Declan Doyle were to leave, they have Eric Bieniemy, who obviously rubbed some people in the NFL the wrong way, but when he was the Chiefs offense coordinator, he was very good at his job. And now with Ben Johnson, hey, he just might have his offensive coordinator in waiting while he's still the de facto guy and no one will touch him. That's not a bad thing to have. And if not, they have Press Taylor as their pass game coordinator, who, again, very young offensive head coach, maybe a little too big for his britches with the stuff in Jacksonville, but held in high regard. It's kind of like the Shane Waldron thing, where both guys haven't been great in their roles, like in their more prominent roles, but you know that they're good because they keep getting these high-profile jobs and people like them for a reason. So put them in like the third or fourth pecking order. That's kind of fun. And then he brought over Antoine Randall L. and JT Barrett from the Lions. So Randall L. Was the, again, wide receivers coach. Those wide receivers in Detroit, very good, and now he's the assistant head coach. That's awesome. And then JT Barrett goes from assistant QB's coach to QB's coach for the Bears. He has a great one to work with Caleb Williams. I mean, crazy that, like, when I really started watching, again, college football in the draft, JT Barrett was Ohio State's QB. He was fantastic, and now he's coaching Caleb Williams, who was the first overall pick last year. That's crazy. I really like how this staff is built. I like that he has so many good, proven, vocal offensive minds in there to give him fresh ideas. I think Ben Johnson is going to be a monster of a head coach. I think that it's different from the, like, I'm smarter than everyone. I think that Ben Johnson truly gets it as an offensive guy, which is tough, but I don't know. I really like it. We'll see how these hires play out, but that is my 1 to 7. Bears, Raiders, Jags, Patriots, Cowboys, Jets, and Saints. That took a bit of time, but let's talk about the Combine now. So Combine starts on Thursday. And again, it's one of my favorite events that the NFL puts on. And I think it's just because I like seeing freakish athletes do freakish athlete things. People at that size should not be able to move that fast. Like, we are going to be seeing people who are basically my size, 6'2", 256, doesn't matter, but basically roughly around my size, run a full second faster than me. Like, and that's the thing, a full second, that doesn't sound... In a 40-yard dash, a second is a long time. When we did, for my own fantasy league, we did a combine for draft order, and we did 40-yard dashes, and I think Cameron had me clocked in at like a 5'8", and I will take a 5'8", but we're going to be seeing guys who are 6'2", 250 run a 4'4". Like, quite easily run that fast, so not even, a full second, it's a second and a half faster than me. This is why I like the combine. So I'm excited for it. So before we talk about some of these freaks that we will be watching at the Combine, just talk about position by position in general. I did this kind of at the start of the new year, I believe, but a lot has changed, and a lot of people's thoughts and perceptions on draft picks have changed, so let's talk about it. Starting off with quarterbacks. Again, I'm not a fan. I've been preaching that all year. Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders. Sanders will not throw. I don't think throwing for quarterbacks really matters at the combine. You're throwing on air. You're throwing to wide receivers you don't have chemistry with. It doesn't matter. It's nice to see the ball come off his hand live, I guess, but that doesn't matter to me because I'm not in Indianapolis, clearly. So it doesn't really matter, but other than those top two, who else are people talking about? Jackson Dart is a name that people keep trying to make happen. I don't know why. Other than that, like, not really. The latest one that's getting a bunch of buzz is Tyler Shough out of Louisville. It's not spelt like Shuck, but it's like SHOUGH, something like that. Either way, it's pronounced Shuck. I don't get it. It's weird to me. But he has crazy arm talent. The problem with him is he is 26 years old. He is old. Like, he is older than Trevor Lawrence, who was drafted in 2021, about to play in his fifth year in the NFL. Like, that's how old he is. And again, we say, like, oh, older quarterbacks, they kind of bucked the trend last year. Jaden Daniels, Bo Nix. No, there's a difference. Tyler Shough is 26. Those guys were 24. That, again, and you should be better than your competition when you're that old and it's your sixth year in college. So, again, his arm will pop off the most in Indy, I believe, but not a good year for quarterbacks. Running backs, this is, oh my god, it's a great class for running backs. Obviously, we have Ashton Jeanty. He's not participating at the combine. He doesn't need to. He's Ashton fucking Jeanty. Other than that, Omarion Hampton out of North Carolina, Caleb Johnson out of Iowa, the Ohio State boys, Travion Henderson, and Quinshon Judkins. We have Devin Neal out of Kansas. We have Ollie Gordon out of Oklahoma State. What's his Byshel Tuden out of Virginia Tech might be the fastest running back in the draft. There's so many names. Like, and I'm forgetting a bunch of them off the top of my head, but like, this is truly like a 10 deep running back class. Like, all shapes and sizes. You can get whatever type of running back you want. It is a very good draft. And again, we're going to see some freaky running backs run. Wide receivers, not as strong, but we'll talk about a few of the guys who I like. But obviously, I want to see how Tet McMillan runs and what his 40 times does. Like, if he runs a 4.5, that's absolutely great. I'm interested to see like what Burden and Abuko run. And then we have guys like Golden and Isaiah Bond and Alec Elaminor. Like, wide receiver solid. Offensive line, lots of good offensive tackles. Will Campbell, Kelvin Banks, Armin Membu, Josh Connerly, Josh Simmons, Ariante Ursary. I don't know, other guys like Gray Zabel and Tyler Booker. Again, lots of O-line in there. Not the same top-end talent, in my opinion, as last year, but those middle rounds, there's still lots of good guys to pick up on. And where this draft is truly strong, the defensive line, edge, and on the interior. On edge, guys like James Pierce Jr., Abdul Carter, who unfortunately can't run because his shoulder, Michael Williams, Jalen Walker, Mike Green, Nick Scordon, who's only 20, by the way, his teammate Shamar Stewart, who's kind of an interior player anyways, the other Ohio State boys, Jack Sawyer and JT Tuamwalu, Princely Umalenin, said that wrong, Donovan Ezaraku, lots of good edge players, lots of good interior players too, Walter Nolan, Mason Graham, Derek Harmon, Kenneth Grant, who we'll talk about more, TJ Sanders, Tyleek Williams. Again, it's a good draft to need trench depth, what teams always need, so good draft. Linebacker is a little weaker. I'm kind of just rambling here. Jahad Campbell is the top guy. We'll talk about him more. Corners, nice. Lots of good corners. We'll see. The safety play is pretty good. But I rambled a little bit too much there. I think let's just get into my top 5 dudes to watch at the Combine, and we will start off with some honorable mentions. So honorable mentions here: Shamar Stewart out of Texas A&M, Tyler Warren, Josh Connerly, Jahad Campbell, Savion Williams. So, Shamar Stewart out of Texas A&M, 6'6", 280. He's going to post freakish numbers. And I could have put him on the list, but I have someone at number 5 who I'll basically talk about them as the same person. Tyler Warren, my top tight end in the draft, top 10 player for me. I'm very interested to see what he runs because he's fucking huge. Like 2'6", 260. He is a people mover. And if he posts like a good 40 time, like I already love him, but like I would love for the Dolphins to take him at 13. Josh Connerly, the tackle out of Oregon. The only reason I put him as an honorable mention is because coming into high school, he was a running back. Like, he only started playing offensive line once he got to high school, and he was a running back before that, so means he should have some pretty good athletic numbers, in my opinion. Jahad Campbell, the linebacker out of Alabama. Freaky good, like, position movement at his size. I think he's like 6'2", 245. Very good modern-day NFL linebacker size, and I'm expecting some very good combine numbers from him. And then Savion Williams, who was probably my first guy to really miss the list, but wide receiver out of TCU. I think that's right. It's a purple school. I know that. I think it's TCU. But 6'5", 225, gonna post some freakish numbers. Will probably run in the 4.4s, maybe a 4.3, gonna jump out the gym, so that might be the most freakish wide receiver that we see. But let's start off with my top 5 here. Jordan Burch, the edge interior player out of Oregon, 6'5", 295. Again, I'm just not talking about Shamar Stewart in detail, because I'm going to do it about a less notable player in Jordan Burch who has some of that same freaky athleticism at that size. You can put him on the interior and he will hold his own. He can anchor those guys in the run game. But on edge, he has the speed to get off and get around those tackles. And again, at 6'5", 295, that's scary. So I don't think he'll put up the same freakish numbers that Shamar Stewart will, but he will also have very freakish numbers for that size. If you want to see a real clip of him using that athleticism this past year at Oregon on a fake punt, he was the man who ran up the ball, and he ran for a good 30, 40 yards. And if you were to tell me that guy was 6'5", 295 who was running like that, I would be shocked. So if you want to go see him, run that clip, but Burch, probably a guy who's looking at a day 2, maybe early day 3 type guy. He has an opportunity to really make a name for himself at the combine. At number 4, we have Darian Porter out of Iowa State, the sixth year player. But the reason he was a 6-year player is he started off as a wide receiver, converted to corner, and he's been pretty good, damn good since. Was 6'2", 197, and he might be the fastest player in the combine. Now, there's lots of fast guys. I think there's a guy at Georgia, and Nina Smith, who he might actually be the fastest because he actually went to Georgia as a track player. But Darian Porter at 6'2", 197, and the fact that I can put him into the conversation maybe of being the fastest is absolutely crazy to me. But no, he was a track star in high school, won multiple state championships in the 400, and when he didn't win, he was the runner-up. So has that track background, very, very fast player at that size. And the reason he will get drafted is because he can, like the measurables, the intangibles and stuff, it's all there for him. But he's going to get drafted because at bare minimum, you have a very, very good special teams player over his time at Iowa State. I think there was a field goal block and he had 4 punt blocks. Like, again, a lot of that stuff, it's like luck and miscues on the other team. But like, if you're getting 4 yourself and like, so 5 technically, you're doing something right. So at bare minimum, he's going to be a very, very good special teams player. And at his ceiling, he could be, a damn good corner in the league. Next player up here, we have Ariante Ursere out of Minnesota, their left tackle. huge dude, 6'6", 330. And the reason I have him on here is apparently he holds the Minnesota school record for 10-yard split, which really, when we're looking at these big guys, the edge players, the interior defensive linemen, the offensive linemen, that 10-yard split number is way more important than the 40-yard dash because it shows their initial explosiveness. But apparently Ursary at 6'6", 330 has the fastest 10-yard split in school history at a 1.52. That's, again, that is freakish. He held his own at the Senior Bowl, had some good reps against Mike Green, who I think is also going to test really well. But last year, the best 10-yard split from an offensive lineman, or an offensive tackle, I should say, was 1.69. So the fact that Ursary might blow that out of the water, that's really impressive to me, especially at 6'6", 330. At number 2, we have Kenneth Grant out of Michigan. Brett Coleman, who I like a lot. Everyone should like Brett Coleman. He's very good at what he does, but he ran into Kenneth and asked him about combine stuff, and Kenneth Grant wants to run a 4.840, and it's like, okay, that's pretty respectable. How big is Kenneth Grant? 6'3", 340-ish. He wants to run a 4.8, 6'3", 340-ish. A couple years ago, I don't know if they would have been teammates, but Mozzie Smith, who ended up going to the Cowboys in the first round, where I was talking about his feats and what he was doing at the Michigan strength thing. And Kenneth Grant apparently blew all of his numbers out of the water. So I talked about Mozzie Smith being one of the freaks at the combine. Kenneth Grant is way better than one of the freaks from a couple years ago that I mentioned, essentially. Very interesting. I would love to see a big boy that, again. We're talking about 6'3", 340, and he wants to run a 4.8. That, again, freakish at his size if he's able to do that. I'm very excited to see that. And at number 1, we have Nick Amanawari, safety out of South Carolina, 6'3", 225. That's size. That is nice size, but apparently he, in the off season anyways, so before his last college season, they were doing some athletic testing, whatever, and he had an 11.4 broad jump, a 42-inch vertical, and it's rumored he can run in the 4.3s. At 6'3", 225, those are all very freakish numbers. Those are all numbers, especially the jumping numbers, that might be the best at the combine, and he might run a 4.3 to just be like, yeah, I'm insanely fast too. And all of that athleticism, it does show up on tape. This isn't like a player comp, but just an athletic profile comp. This is Derwin James, the freak athlete who can move at that size. Only very few people can do that. And Nick Amanawari has, again, he has a lot of money to earn himself at the combine. Guys like Daniel Jeremiah have been very high on him from the beginning. I think he's still a top 30 player for him. I like him too. Again, I like my freakish athletes. And if you're 6'3", 225 with an 11.4 broad, a 42-inch vert, and you run a 4.3, you can come play for the Dolphins any fucking day. Actually, we do need safety help, so that actually might be a potential second-round target, which I wouldn't mind in the slightest. But, yeah, those are the freak athletes to watch out for the Combine. A few honorable mentions. This was a really good show. I'm going to end it before the hour mark, so I don't have to do the weird editing thing. You guys don't know it, but behind-the-scenes stuff for me. No, this was great. We covered a lot. We went over a lot. I'm excited for the Combine. I'm excited for, again, the off-season. We got 2 more months of good NFL stuff, and then we hit a total dead period. So enjoy this content while it lasts, because after the draft, it becomes tough. It really does. So again, we will see what happens. But as always, if you've liked this, please like, share, retweet, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Tell all your friends. And until next time, peace.